AOC thinks everyone who criticizes her wants to date her.
Mr. Reagan.
All right, how do I put this nicely? No one wants to date you, you crazy bitch. You're not that pretty. Now, this all started with criticism of AOC going to Florida for New Year's Eve. Why would people criticize her for going to Florida? Well, AOC is a big proponent of mask mandates. She's a big proponent of lockdowns and basically every other kind of fascistic tyranny imaginable. If government can impose it, she's for it. She's harshly criticized Governor DeSantis for keeping Florida lockdown free, not imposing mask mandates, and not basically making sure everybody gets fired from their jobs if they're not vaccinated, stuff like that. So for her to escape from the prison walls of New York and enjoy the freedoms of Florida that she has so derided in the past, well, people see that as a mite hypocritical. Ironically, the free state of Florida is faring much better than locked down New York.
This Omicron surge really isn't showing a big spike in hospitalizations or deaths. In fact, Florida is doing much, much better than some of these big states that have these lockdowns, these vaccine mandates, and these mask mandates.
So it seems that the fascistic tyranny advocated by AOC isn't actually working. And going to Florida, she's kind of admitting that, although she'd never say so vocally. Of course, AOC has not responded to this criticism about her hypocrisy because why would she? There's nothing she can say that would be reasonable at all, except I was wrong, and we know that's not going to happen. So she's just ignored the criticism of her double standard. But you can't let people do whatever they want. We're in a pandemic. We need to shut everything down, ban people from restaurants, mandate useless face fabric, and fire the unvaccinated from their jobs, eliminating their ability to buy food or pay rent. People must suffer so that they'll submit to our tyrannical rules. Wait, what? New York isn't doing the big New Year's Eve thing? Well, crap, I'm going to Florida. And as I said, AOC is not responding to any of the legitimate criticism about her hypocrisy. But she is responding to something else. Criticism about her boyfriend's sandals. Now, I'll get into this hilarious little fiasco in one moment. First, I have to sell you something. Right now, stocks are at an all-time high. The economy is roaring. Houses are selling and weak interest rates are at zero. And the government just printed $5 trillion. What could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, consumer confidence has hit a 10-year low, and inflation hit 6.8%, with parts of the U.S. seeing rates as high as 8%. Something is not adding up. So what can you do? You can play it safe. Putting some of your assets into precious metals will keep your money away from the volatility of the markets and will protect you from inflation. Investing in precious metals will let you sleep at night. This month, Noble Gold is giving away a free America the Beautiful solid silver 5-ounce coin with any qualifying plan that you start. So talk to an expert at Noble Gold and they'll run you through your options to keep your money safe. No pressure, no hassling, no call centers, just a chance to speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about. And how refreshing would that be? Start by calling 877-646-5347 or visit their website at noblegoldinvestments.com. So apparently somebody got a photo of AOC and her boyfriend hanging out in Florida, and folks on Twitter noticed her boyfriend's disgusting sandals, which, I mean, who doesn't hate Birkenstocks? They're hideous. If you wear them, I'm sorry. I don't want to say that you have no fashion sense, but you probably also have a pair of Crocs, don't you? Yeah, you do. Excuse me while I go throw up. Now, I'm being a little bit silly, of course, and so were the folks on Twitter. This red-haired goofball is an easy target, and Birkenstocks are universally hated, so naturally people are going to tease him a little bit about his sandals. But AOC took this very seriously. Now, at first, I thought she was joking, but she definitely was not. Allow me to read her tweet. She wrote, "If Republicans are mad that they can't date me, they can just say that instead of projecting their sexual frustrations onto my boyfriend's feet, you creepy weirdos." Now, as I said, when I originally read this, I genuinely thought that she was joking. And, it was one of the few times that I actually was impressed with AOC. I thought, wow, that was actually a pretty funny response. So I wrote, and this is real, I wrote this on Twitter to AOC in response to that tweet. I wrote, "I respect the trolling if I'm honest." right? Because I thought she was just teasing people. I thought she was joking. But then I read her second tweet in this 2-tweet chain in which she wrote, "It's starting to get old ignoring the very obvious, strange, and deranged sexual frustrations that underpin the Republican fixation on me, women, and LGBT plus people in general." She missed the cue, I would like to note. "These people clearly need therapy, won't do it, and use politics as their outlet instead. It's really weird." Now, after reading that, I realized, oh crap, she actually believes this. So I wrote, "At first I thought you were joking, but you actually believe this. Awkward." Now, one guy called Ian Haworth, I'd never heard of him. He's got a blue check. He must be somebody important. He wrote back to AOC saying, "I definitely do not want to date you." And for some bizarre reason, AOC took this as a kind of validation, like somehow that proved her right? Like it was some kind of "the lady doth protest too much, methinks" kind of a thing, right? But Ian Haworth, sorry, I keep wanting to say Hawsworth for some reason. Ian Haworth, he doth not protest too much. He protests precisely the right amount. If somebody accuses you of something and you respond with, "That's not true," that's not protesting too much. That's just protesting the normal amount that one should protest. I mean, I feel like we're watching a sitcom here. Like this is like a sitcom joke where the girl at school tells a boy, "It's okay, I know you have a thing for me." And the guy's like, "No, I don't have a thing for you." And the girl says, "Yeah, but really you do." And the guy's just like, "Okay, what the hell's going on?" you know that's a pretty typical sitcom joke. I've seen it in lots of different shows, except this is not a sitcom. This is happening in real life. And you know what? Somehow that makes it so much funnier. I sometimes wonder if AOC is truly evil or if she's just stupid. I mean, she supports all this Marxist crap that would destroy the country. But I think most of us kind of give her a break because we're like, well, she is an idiot. So I guess maybe she really does believe that she's doing the right thing. But you know what? She's an elected member of Congress. We cannot afford to treat her so charitably. Her ideas and her policies are destructive. And her salary, her perks, her benefits, these all come out of our taxes. We're paying her to be a moron. This cannot stand. She must be criticized with the same severity as every other leftist politician. And I do think that her intentions are knowingly sinister. I actually think she, just kind of hides her sinister intentions behind her stupidity, which, again, we should not be letting her get away with. If you're knowingly trying to tear down the capitalist constitutional republic that has risen so many out of poverty, that has facilitated the development of so much technology, so much amazing stuff that we have in the world today, has improved the quality of life of every American and almost everyone around the world, you must be stopped. Now, this thing about her saying that all of her critics want to date her, this is, of course, kind of trivial matter. But I did think that I should do a video on it for two reasons. One, I think I am one of the more high-profile critics of AOC, right? I mean, one of the reasons that my channel really blew up, there was a few videos, but the biggest one was my brains behind AOC video. And so people do kind of associate me with having, put out this piece against AOC. Two, I've actually been targeted personally with this very accusation. So after I put out the brains behind AOC video, it, kind of went viral. It was kind of a big thing. And a few people put out hit pieces on me. And a couple of them actually suggested that I had some kind of obsession with AOC, right? This was kind of something they were saying about lots of people who were criticizing AOC at the time. People were like, "Oh, AOC's pretty. Oh, the people criticizing her must be in love with her," right? I remember in particular, Saikat Chakrabarti tweeted something about my video and me and about conservatives being obsessed with AOC or something like that. And AOC retweeted it. So I was personally targeted by her campaign. Saikat Chakrabarti was her campaign manager and then her chief of staff. He's gone now, but that was pretty crazy. I remember at the time I was laughing at this, as is the natural reaction, I think, for an absurd accusation like this. But I was laughing in particular because obviously none of these people had ever looked at my wife's Instagram. I mean, if they had just taken 1 second to go, "Oh, let me research this guy. Oh, look at his wife. Holy crap. Okay, he's definitely not obsessed with AOC." Right? If you have an amazing Renaissance painting, a Rembrandt, something like that, right? You would never go, you know what? I don't really want this priceless, amazing thing. You know, you can take the Rembrandt. Just give me some of that garbage out of the gutter. Give me some gutter trash. That's what I want. I don't want the Rembrandt. I want the gutter trash. No, you wouldn't do that. That would be insane. So just, if you've never seen my wife before, just look at her Instagram, look at her pictures, compare them to AOC, and then think, which is the Rembrandt and which is the gutter trash? No, I shouldn't say that. Okay, I shouldn't say AOC is gutter trash. That's a terrible thing to say, and it's not even accurate. Okay, I will say I do think AOC is pretty. Okay, I think she's pretty. There are a lot of people that have commented in previous videos I've made of AOC, and because I've said that before, and people said, "What are you talking about? AOC is hideous." And all right, I get why you're saying that, because she's a very despicable person, and that kind of shifts how you see somebody, and she obviously comes across as a very ugly person. But physically, she's pretty. I mean, she's not everyone's taste. I think she has a very particular look. I would say that for sure she is not my type. I mean, if I had gone to high school with AOC or something and she had had a crush on me, it would have been a very awkward, right? Because I would have had to say, I like you as a friend, that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm sure there are lots of guys that really find her attractive and would certainly date her. And I should clarify, or I should distinguish the term would and want to, right? Because although I do think there's probably plenty of guys who would date AOC, I think there's probably relatively few guys who actively would want to date AOC and would actually pursue her. So would and want to, I think, are kind of different things. And to many of you out here that watching this who may not know this or may not want to believe this, I will say that men are a little bit more sophisticated than you might think. Men don't tend to just be attracted to every girl they see that's a little bit cute. There's a lot that goes through the unconscious mind of a single guy who's scoping out chicks, how a woman dresses, how clean she is, how good she smells, how nice her hair is done, her job, her future plans, how active she is, how if she does sports, if she keeps fit, her dating history, how many guys she's been with, whether or not she has kids, her sense of humor. These are all factors. A woman's voice, for instance. This is an important one. A woman's voice has a lot to do with how attractive she is. Some women have beautiful voices that make them more attractive.
I say daiquiri, you say daiquiri?
Daiquiri.
Okay, that's why you were asking what is that. But that one is the good one, the one I'm saying. But it's not the mojito, it's a classic, super fresh and cold and sweet. I like sweet.
Other women have a voice like this.
Radical doesn't mean crazy. Radical means addressing the root, addressing the rot. And that is why we have proposed a Green New Deal for the future of America.
So we see some women are more sonically beautiful as well as being more visually beautiful. And even if AOC were as beautiful as she thinks she is, she's still crazy. AOC once suggested that cauliflower is racist.
When someone says that it's too hard to do a green space that grows yucca instead of, I don't know, cauliflower or something, what you're doing is that you're taking a colonial approach to environmentalism, and that is why a lot of communities of color get resistant to certain environmentalist movements, because they come with a colonial lens on them.
Imagine you're a single guy and somebody has set you up on a blind date with AOC. She's not famous, you don't know who she is, but she set you up. They set you up on a date with AOC. I feel like AOC is the kind of girl that you would find yourself agreeing with all night, not because you actually agree with her, not because you're trying to get her to like you, but because you are desperately trying to keep her calm until the moment comes when you can make your escape. The bill comes, you pay for dinner, you drive her home, maybe you give her a hug in order to sell the lie that you don't find her mildly terrifying, because you know those crazies can smell fear. And as she leans in for a kiss, you recoil and you say, not on a first date. Then you get in your car and you peel off, the sound of screeching tires cutting through the cold night air. You leave this long trail of tire marks, adding to the countless others that have been burnt into the street from AOC's previous blind dates. About AOC, I think most people think pretty, but certainly not a supermodel, not very bright, and a little crazy. If I were to guess, I suspect that would be the general consensus. Probably even among many leftists. So the idea that all the guys that have ever criticized her are actually in love with her It's such a cringy thing for her to say. I mean, she said this publicly. Man, I mean, it's like a vaguely intelligent person running around insisting that they're a genius, or a mediocre boxer insisting that he's the best in the world. It's just one of those moments where everyone just looks at this person and thinks, no, you're not. I mean, it would be one thing if she were once like Miss America or a Victoria's Secret model, something like that before getting into politics. But even then, saying that all of her critics want to date her, people would still think that she's a deluded moron. But at least she'd have some kind of validation for saying something so insanely narcissistic. But she wasn't a Victoria's Secret model. She wasn't Miss America. She's just a random bartender. Now, bars do tend to hire vaguely cute girls to tend bar, and drunk guys sometimes hit on those vaguely cute girls. And so those vaguely cute girls can, I imagine, get an inflated sense of their own beauty. But what AOC is saying here, this goes well beyond an inflated sense of beauty. This is straight up delusional. And my guess is that this is what her friends tell her in order to console her when she's criticized. And that's fine, I guess, except she's actually come to believe it. AOC has just been getting roasted over Twitter for saying it. People are retweeting this in the thousands, and they are just laughing at her. I almost feel bad for her, but not really. I mean, this is not something that just happened to her. This is something that she did to herself. Now, I've actually met a couple of girls like this before. Most girls in LA have the opposite problem of AOC. They actually have a lower sense of self-esteem than they should. And that's, I think, mainly because there's tons of like really beautiful girls out here. You could go to like a Starbucks in Beverly Hills and there's just like a stunningly beautiful woman serving coffee to you. And I imagine a girl that's very beautiful that walks into that Starbucks thinks, sheesh, even the baristas are more beautiful than me, right? So you can get a girl who's very, very beautiful who thinks that she's like just kind of average or maybe kind of cute because she doesn't recognize her own desirability to men, because she's just surrounded by other women that she's comparing herself to. But occasionally, even out here in Los Angeles, you do meet a girl with like this bizarrely inflated sense of herself. And there was one girl that I remember in particular who had the same kind of AOC derangement syndrome. Maybe we'll coin that, right? AOC derangement syndrome. Yeah. That's not a medical condition when you think that every guy in the world wants to date you. So I was friends with this girl on Facebook. I met her at some kind of like filmmaking group thing. And I noticed that she was posting these, this is back when Facebook was like the social media everyone used. And she would post these complaints, I guess, about guys that she would run into. And it was always about how the guy was like overly aggressive and trying to get with her. And one of them in particular struck me because it was obviously not true. She had totally misperceived the situation. The guy was like an employee at a grocery store and had asked her if she needed any help. And she said no and told the guy to like leave her alone. And the guy was like, all right. So he left her alone. And she took this "can I help you" thing as if the guy was like trying to get her in bed or something. And she wrote this huge long thing complaining about this. And I remember thinking, this girl is legitimately crazy. Like, this is insane. I couldn't help it. I had to write something, and I was brutal. And the reason I was so brutal was because I felt like nobody else was criticizing this woman, and I knew she was going to block me after that, and she did, and it's fine. But like, I had met this girl, right? I mean, she'd added me as a friend on Facebook because we met in real life, and I can tell you, she wasn't that pretty. So I wrote on the thing, look, lady, you're not that pretty. You seem to think every guy you ever meet wants to date you, and it's just not true. I mean, you have nice hair, you're not ugly, but you're not this goddess that you think you are. Like, a lot of people are just nice and friendly and trying to talk to you, and you shouldn't judge all of these guys as these, sexual predators. And I wrote a pretty long, scathing comment on this post of hers. And like I said, naturally, I was blocked instantly. But I just felt like she had to hear it from somebody. I genuinely made it as cruel as I possibly could, because I felt like that was the only way to snap her out of the delusion. Whether that helped her or not, I don't know. Probably not, but I don't know. It's just what I thought I should do at the time. And I mean, I think this is almost exactly what's going on with AOC. And I have a theory about this. I think that the psychology of women who are like this is not just sheer narcissism, right? I actually think that this stems from insecurity. So I think a lot of these girls who claim that they think that every guy who sees them instantly falls in love with them, I think these girls deep down know that they're not the most desirable women in the world. They know that they have an annoying voice, or they're a little too aggressive, or they're a little crazy, or they're not quite pretty enough, or whatever it is. And they develop a kind of complex because of these shortcomings, and The narcissism is a kind of facade, right? It's a kind of false persona that they develop in order to create the illusion of confidence. But then because they're not truly confident, their pretense way overshoots the mark and they just seem crazy. And that's what I think's happening here with AOC. Although there's probably quite a lot of genuine narcissism mixed in there too, I do think that this stems from insecurity and low self-esteem. I mean, after all, if she really thought that she could get any guy in the world, would she still be dating this guy? I don't think so. Now, in her defense, AOC's tweet may have been strategic. I don't think so, but let's play devil's advocate here for a minute. Now, she mentioned that Republican men have a deranged sexual frustration and a fixation on her and LGBT folks. And this hints at a political strategy that was once used in the past. This was in the 90s. Gay rights groups, LGBT folks, they put out this idea into the world that if you were homophobic, if you were critical at all of gay marriage or any kind of homosexuality, well, then you yourself were secretly gay. They would say you're a latent homosexual. You're secretly gay, and this makes you very frustrated, sexually frustrated, and so you lash out with this hatred against gay people, and that's why you're against gay marriage and this kind of thing, right? So I think now AOC is kind of copying that strategy, right? Or I don't actually think she's copying the strategy, but it's possible that she is. She's now saying, if you criticize me, well, you must be in love with me. And it could be a very effective strategy, right? If it worked. If guys were genuinely afraid that people would think that they had a thing for AOC if they criticized her, then maybe they would stop criticizing her. I mean, it worked with the gay thing, and it makes sense because people are calling out her hypocrisy for going to Florida after condemning Governor DeSantis for being too lax about COVID. And so she has a good reason to distract from the criticism and to shift the focus onto the critics themselves. But honestly, I don't think she's that smart. And anyway, even if this is strategic, there's a pretty massive problem with that strategy. The gay thing wasn't about one person. It was about a fake psychological phenomenon that people believed was real. If you were critical of homosexuality, then that meant that you were gay, right? People believed that. And guys were like, crap, I don't want everybody thinking I'm gay. And so the LGBTQXYZ criticism essentially ended. It was very effective. But with AOC, it's one person. We can all see what you look like. We can hear your voice. We can see how you flail your arms like a deranged marionette puppet and how you say insane things all the time.
What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history. Shameful. The greed.
We know how attractive you are, and you're certainly not at all desirable to most conservatives. And so nobody's going to be fooled by this claim. Not even most leftists are going to believe it. And I can tell you this, none of us are going to stop criticizing you because we're concerned about being perceived as obsessed with AOC. We're still going to call you out when you say stupid things. Now, as I said, I don't think that this was strategic. I think that the latent homosexuality thing was strategic, and I also think that AOC doesn't actually understand that that was a strategy, and she genuinely believes that anybody who's critical of homosexuality must secretly be gay. I think that she really believes this. And so I think that belief reinforces her other insane belief that everybody who criticizes her secretly wants to date her. Now, I will say that the criticism of her boyfriend isn't very nice, and I am morally against that. The guy has a goofy look. He's clearly a beta male dominated by his girlfriend. So, mocking him is kind of like kicking somebody in a wheelchair or making fun of the mentally handicapped. It really should be off limits. But he was wearing Birkenstocks, and so that kind of puts him back into fair game territory. Sorry, man, you chose to wear those sandals. It's kind of on you. But the point really isn't how undesirable AOC is or how goofy her boyfriend is. The point is that she said publicly that everybody wants to date her. And as I said before, even coming from a Victoria's Secret model, that would be an insane thing to say. Now, on the right, we often talk about the delusions of the left, the double standards, the lack of rationality, the lack of self-awareness. But when we're talking about those things, it's usually in the context of political ideas. But AOC's tweet shows that it clearly goes further than that. Clearly, their political delusions are just a consequence of a natural tendency to be deluded. The tendency to be deluded might just be a natural part of the leftist brain. Maybe it's encoded in their DNA or something. And for somebody to be so narcissistic, so delusional, so lacking in self-awareness, well, even if AOC was as astonishingly beautiful as she seems to think she is, these qualities, to most people, would totally eclipse that, because that kind of person is pretty dang revolting. All right, now if you made it all the way through this video, thank you so much for watching. Please go check out my comedy video that I have posted right now on Mr. Pagan. It's a good one. Please share it with your friends if you like it and subscribe to that channel. I'm trying to build up my Mr. Pagan channel. Well, that's it for me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just that they're all insane. Good night.
It was Seneca or it was Cicero, I don't know which, that said, if it was not for the elders correcting the mistakes of the young, there would be no state.
I believe with all my heart that our first priority must be world peace, and that use of force is always and only a last resort when everything else has failed.